No matter what, we come together for the good of our constituents, and I'm proud and honored to lead the People's House of the New York State Legislature.
The health and protection of the human beings that live in our districts is our responsibility.
Frederick Douglass's words for us today, I quote, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress."
If you want equity to happen, then this is where it happens.
All of us have a responsibility to the greater good.
The House will come to order.
Hello and welcome to Assembly Update. I'm Liz Koenig. Today we're going to be talking about the state budget. We have an update for you on that topic. And joining me to discuss this topic and some others is Assemblyman Jeffrey Dinowitz, who represents the 81st Assembly District in the Bronx. Thanks so much for coming in today.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
I learned something fascinating today.
Did you?
Yes, today is March 19th, and
Yes.
yet it's the first day of spring.
It is.
And I remember thinking, I never heard of spring beginning on March 19th. It always begins on March 20th, maybe the 21st, but it's a leap year, and so that changes things a little bit. But I was so sure that it never happened in my lifetime that I Googled it, and the last time spring began on March 19th was in 1896.
There you go. Little trivia information for folks out there.
Very important trivia.
Yes, absolutely.
So 11:06 p.m. tonight, it is spring.
Oh, thank goodness, right? If only the weather would cooperate. So before we get into talking about the budget process and where we are right now with the budget process, you had a very important meeting yesterday. You met with the parents of a hostage in Gaza. Can you tell us about that meeting?
Yes, I'd actually met these parents before. Their son's name is Omer Nutra. He grew up on Long Island, and he was to go to Binghamton for college, but he decided to take a time off. I guess they call it a gap year, to visit Israel. And he, as the parents said, he fell in love with Israel. He was an important part of many causes there, and he was part of the IDF, and he was one of the people that was kidnapped on October 7th, and the parents have become activists, as so many of the families have. I mean, they don't know if their son's alive or not, but they of course have hopes that he'll come back. I remember going to a rally just a couple of days after October 7th in Times Square, and there were thousands of people there. And they had, they have those giant electronic billboards all over the place in Times Square, and they were showing pictures of the hostages, some of whom were little children, some of whom were very, very old people, but, at that point there were many more hostages. And so Omer's father, I believe, was one of the speakers that night, and we had met some of the families at various points. And just a few weeks ago, I attended a rally in Central Park where thousands of people showed up, and there were several hostage families, and there was a woman who had been a hostage. She was one of the people that had been released earlier on, and to think of what they're going through. I mean, these are innocent people being used as pawns by what I consider savage terrorists to try to achieve their ends, whatever they may be. So Omer's parents have been back and forth to Washington. Yesterday they were in Albany. I mean, all over the place, trying to increase awareness, people's engagement in this, because regardless of anything else that's going on, I believe that the hostages should be released immediately. I believe they should be released unconditionally. And I guess what bothers me a lot is that there are many people out there who are demanding an immediate ceasefire, and with few exceptions, I never hear many of those people or groups say, ceasefire now, release the hostages now. And it shows the horrible bias, and probably worse, of many of the people who are demanding an immediate ceasefire. And I don't want to see this war continue. I don't think anybody does. I hope nobody does. But one of the most horrific attacks in our lifetimes took place on October 7th, and it was the single biggest loss of life of Jewish people since the Holocaust. And yet there are so many people who are anti-Israel and in many cases, but not all cases, anti-Jewish, who seem to have put that behind them and only focus on the war and what's going on in the Gaza Strip. And I know it's horrible. As I said, I don't want to see that continue for another day, but I can't put myself in the shoes of the people in Israel who understand that unless this terrorist organization is eliminated, it's going to happen again, because they've said it repeatedly that they're going to do it again. So I say believe them when they say that. But in the meanwhile, at a minimum, people are demanding humanitarian aid for the people in Gaza, and I certainly would not argue with that. You don't want to see people starve, although when aid is provided, a lot of it is stolen by the terrorists, and whatever they do with it, resell it, take it for themselves only, we don't know for sure. But we don't want to see innocent people die. But the hostages are innocent people also. So it was very meaningful when they met with a group of us yesterday. Then they were introduced on the floor of the Assembly, and I believe they also met with people in the Senate as well to to keep this issue alive, because this is important. This has to be the first issue.
Absolutely.
So it was really very moving, hearing a mother and a father talk about their son, and their son he's 22 years old. So terrible. It's just horrible.
It really is, and we'll obviously keep them in our thoughts and prayers, and hopefully we have a good outcome. So I want to move on now and talk about the state budget, because it's obviously on everybody's mind right now. So the Assembly recently passed their One House budget resolution, and a big part of that dealt with housing. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. First of all, there are big areas of housing that have to be negotiated, but in our One House budget resolution, I guess it was left a little vague deliberately, but what most of the people in our conference, I think most, I would say, want to see is additional protections for tenants, something that many people refer to as good cause eviction, which will prevent evictions except in cases where the tenant doesn't pay the rent, where the tenant is disruptive, destructive, and so on, but not just willy-nilly when the landlord says, "Oh, I don't want you here anymore because I can double the rent with somebody else." And it would also limit rent increases in what are currently unregulated apartments, and that's key to what we're looking towards. I think we all understand that in the final budget, if there is going to be a deal on housing in the budget, and it doesn't have to be in the budget, it could be later on in session, that it's going to involve a combination of improvements for the positions of tenants, but also making it easier, creating incentives to build more housing, protection for unions, and just a number of things. So there's a lot of moving parts, and to get everybody together, everybody's going to have to give a little to get a little, and that's the nature of compromise. So even with Democrats in the majority in both houses, as well as the governor, it's not lopsided. Everybody understands that we're going to have to do a number of things. Many people believe that we have to build huge amounts of housing. I think we need to build housing, affordable housing. I'm not convinced that the need is as great as many developers are saying. And the only reason I say that, or the main reason I say that, is because there are tens of thousands of vacant apartments right now. And in addition, there are, according to all the information we have, over 500,000 people have left the city since the pandemic. So if so many people left, Are they still in their apartments while they're not in their apartments? I don't know the answer to that. But there's no question we do need to develop more affordable housing. So that's going to be a main part of the budget discussion for the next 2 weeks, and probably the biggest sticking point as well.
Now, you were able to secure some funds in the One House resolution for amalgamated housing. Can you tell us about that?
This is really important. I was able to get into our budget $50 million for capital needs for the amalgamated houses. The amalgamated houses, which is known nationally, it was built by unions. It's over 90 years old, and it's about 1,500 units of housing. But in recent years, they've had financial problems, and there are tremendous capital needs, huge capital needs, whether it's replacing a roof or a boiler or any one of a number of things, and it's going to cost a lot of money. So in our resolution, we make provisions for that. Now, this is just our resolution, so it's not real money yet. But what we need to happen is the senators, and there are two different senators who represent the amalgamated, because the nonpartisan special master who drew the lines managed to divide the amalgamated, and I don't know how that happened or why it happened, but it happened. So one senator represents the tower buildings, the other senator represents the rest of the amalgamated, and what they need to do, and I know they hopefully will try, is to get that into get the Senate behind that as well, and then hopefully the governor will come on board. And I have spoken to the governor about the need to preserve affordable housing, which is what the amalgamated is.
Also, there was something about Mitchell-Lama housing?
Yes, Mitchell-Lama housing, which is one of the most successful housing programs ever in New York for affordable housing. I have several Mitchell-Lamas in my district, including Park Reservoir, Cannon Heights, Waldo Gardens. I have some buildings, Olaf Towers, some buildings that used to be Mitchell-Lamas, but many of them are also struggling right now. And we put in $500 million for Mitchell-Lamas, not only in my district, I wish. And again, we need the Senate and the governor to support us in this, because if we want affordable housing, we have to preserve what we have. So that would be part of it. So I hope that, I hope that's in the final budget as well.
And we only have about a minute left, but I wanted to talk about your visit to the Bronx High School of Science.
Oh, I could talk about that for an hour, but I visited with the two robotic teams there. You can't believe how brilliant, how incredible these students are. These are all, I guess, 12th grade, 11th grade, maybe 10th grade students. They were on teams. There were two different teams. There were teams all over the city and the state and the country, actually. And the amazing stuff that they build, and it's not only having the knowledge and ability, it's working together as a team, and I was just so impressed by them. When I went to Bronx Science, which was eons ago, I didn't know what robotics was or if it even existed at the time, but it sure exists now, and these kids are amazing, and so I'm just really proud of them, and so many other kids as well.
Well, good for them. I know science is the big industry now, so they're doing a great job. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Again. We've been speaking with Assemblymember Jeffrey Dinowitz, who represents the 81st Assembly District in the Bronx. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.